Police involving Gallup, the gay and lesbian policing charity. There were big bridges to build, and no one seemed willing to talk. But 5 days after Andrew Collier's murder, one man did want to speak, and he phoned Kensington Police Station to do it. He knew a serial killer was on the loose, because he was the serial killer. Once again, it seemed Ireland wanted his gruesome work to be noticed.
And he's trying to explain to me that he'd committed a murder in the last couple of days. And I said to him, OK, can you obviously tell me, how am I going to believe you? And he went into the facts and said, well, I'll tell you. He said, I killed a gentleman the other day, and what I've done is I've placed the tail of the cat into his mouth. This pricked my ears up, and I started to think this is real, not a prankster call. It was as though he needed to be caught. I felt he wanted to be caught.
15 minutes later, he made another phone call. Later in the day, a third.
That makes me a serial. I'm not going to make it too easy for you. There's a connection.
Finally, Ireland contacted Battersea Police Station. At the end of these calls, detectives knew the 4 deaths were the responsibility of just one man.
Fortunately, it wasn't through any clever detective work. The linking was done as a consequence of Colin Ireland asking, why haven't you linked these 4 murders? Okay. And he listed the names of the people involved and where they were.
But Ireland was eager to give them even more sensational news. While they'd been busy investigating the death of his 4th victim, he'd gone out and killed yet again.
Why are you doing this? Why in particular homosexuals?
The DC who'd picked up the call just as he would any other call coming into the office clearly was thinking at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
But what was your aim in all that?
Cool, calculated. He knew what he was doing. He was playing a game with us.
How do you stop him?
Ireland had claimed his 5th victim, Emmanuel Spiteri, just 5 days after killing Andrew Collier, and he'd met him yet again during a visit to the Coleherne.
I didn't talk to him then. I saw him on the tube station a little bit later. I was caught, we bumped into him. Got talking to him then.
The 2 men made their way back to Spiteri's South London flat via several trains. When they got there, Ireland, now a pro, cuffed and bound him, put a noose around his neck and demanded his PIN number. But unlike the other victims, Spiteri refused and said nothing.
He said, "Not if you want to talk to me, only about the information I'd asked him for." And he started to shake his head up and down. But I think that was more of a reaction to being strangled.
Ireland craved a greater buzz for this, his 5th murder. He had reached a whole new level in humiliating his victim.
And then piled all the papers and furniture together in the centre of the room, for no particular reason, but at least a point where I couldn't stop myself.
With Spiteri laying dead, Ireland set the flat on fire. He made his way back to Southend, calling in to see his friend Richard Higgs on the way home. But this time, his behaviour was erratic.
You got a few minutes?
First thing I noticed was that he just dropped his bag on the floor, whereas normally he'd hold, his bag would be held in sort of great regard, and he'd be very careful with it.
Of course. Come with me. Fine. Good. Just want to come and have a chat.
He was speaking very oddly. He was speaking in the 3rd tense. He grabbed my young daughter's hand and said, "Do you want to come and see the chipmunks?" I grabbed her other hand because I was feeling very uncomfortable about him and said we hadn't got time. And he stopped, and in the 3rd tense he said, I asked if she wanted to see the chipmunks. He says, no, you can't. And I just wanted to get away as quickly as possible.
Back in London, the police received a call from Emmanuel Spiteri's landlady. The fire had burnt itself out, but her lodger was lying dead.
Here he is, he's killed now 5, 3 in a week. The tremendous pressure, unbelievable. It was stress at 110 plus. It really was a difficult time.
There was no time to waste. Just hours after locating Spiteri's body, the police arranged a midnight press conference.
Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm sure you're wondering why this time late at night.
If Ireland had struck yet again that night and he was in the front room of a victim's house and it came on television, then that just could have stopped another murder.
It has now been established this afternoon, pathologically, forensically, that those murders are linked. There has been a 5th development tonight, a murder, which bears features to the others that we are investigating.
News reports warned the gay community to be careful in case the killer was preparing to strike again. And the police did another press conference, this time aimed directly at the killer.
Enough is enough. Enough pain, enough anxiety, enough tragedy. Give yourself up.
Officers were dispatched onto the streets to appeal for more information. Their target, London's Gay Pride Festival, attended by more than 50,000 people.
I've got a lot of time and a lot of praise for one particular member of the gay community who had the guts to come forward and actually talk to us. Wasn't easy. His parents didn't know he was gay, and he gave us an excellent description. He was on the same train as Spiteri and Ireland going down to Hither Green.
Soon, other witnesses came forward, all offering descriptions of the man police were looking for. As a result, they were able to issue an e-fit. But more importantly, they'd also been given 450 hours of CCTV footage to sift through. The images were captured at Charing Cross, the station Emmanuel Spiteri would have used to travel home to South London before he was murdered. Finally, the officers identified him and had an image of the killer.
This is the picture. The man on the right is Emmanuel Spiteri. The man on the left is the one police want to trace.
By the next day, police had received more than 40 calls from people, some of them claiming that they'd seen or met the man in the Coleherne. Back in Southend, Ireland had recognised himself from the CCTV and knew others would too. So he visited a solicitor, complete with an alibi.
Yeah, it was. And it was me on the e-fit they're showing, but I didn't kill him. I was with him on the night, and I went back towards his flat with him, but there was already somebody in there. And I didn't want to be part of that, so I just turned around and left.
Right, let's take a seat.
Ireland may have been expecting a visit from detectives at some stage, but he didn't know they'd already identified him and were on their way to Southend. What he also didn't know is that he'd made a huge mistake at one of the crime scenes. Police needed concrete evidence to charge Ireland, and now they'd got it.
That was his only mistake. There was no other forensic evidence whatsoever other than that single fingerprint.
The identification of Colin Ireland on CCTV had given detectives their first major breakthrough in their hunt for the serial killer. But although he'd been captured on film alongside one of his victims, he'd prepared an excuse.
And I didn't want to be part of that, so I just turned around and left.
He may have thought he could explain away the CCTV, but the police had more to go on than that.
The second breakthrough for the total investigation was the fingerprint at Andrew Collier's address.
One of the marks we found in this flat, which turned out later to be quite significant, was on this rail here. Subsequently, we found that the mark we lifted from here was identical with Ireland.
How had Ireland made this mistake? After every killing, he'd been meticulous in cleaning up, but soon after arriving at Andrew Collier's flat, there'd been a disturbance outside. Whilst looking through the window, Ireland had left his mark, and for the first time, forgot to wipe it clean afterwards.
That was his only mistake. There was no other forensic evidence whatsoever other than that single fingerprint.
To be dispatched down to Southend at that time was a bit of an adrenaline rush, because we really felt that this was going to be the break we needed, and we're going to arrest the man who'd killed 5 people in London.
When Ireland returned to the solicitor's office later that day, Terry Webster was waiting for him.
Colin Ireland. Colin Ireland, I'm arresting you on suspicion.